Today, let's get to listen to stories of triumph amidst failures, courage despite fear, strength through weakness, and even the occasional hopeful cheer from personal punny experiences. I am your host, RKaye, and this is the BetterU podcast. What is up, fam? Welcome to another episode of the BetterU podcast. Coach RKaye here, and welcome to another show, everybody. Of course, today we will be continuing our series where we do answer some very frequently asked questions. And today, hopefully by the end of the show, you'll be able to pick up a few things here and there that can help you out with your very own fitness journey. And so today, what is it that we get to answer? Well, today's frequently asked question is, how do we fight off the lazy? All right. So when I talk about the lazy, it pretty much is those moments when we don't necessarily feel that we would like to train, or that we don't really essentially have training as a priority. Possibly after such a busy day, or we're already exhausted, we feel like the last thing we want to do is train. All right. So this is possibly one of the most common questions that a lot of people get to ask themselves, aside from the fact that, oh, I'm so extremely busy, I don't really have time to train. All right. So this is also, I think, in tandem with that. Oftentimes, many people think that being able to train is something that you really are able to stick with routinely. That is true. But oftentimes there will be instances where, sometimes it doesn't really align for you. The training that you would like to get through within the day, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to do that. So today we try to look into some tips and tricks that we could possibly apply for our own fitness journey, and be able to push past that mindset or that issue of feeling very lazy. All right. And of course, today we also get to look into what is lazy. I mean, a lot of people have their own perceptions of laziness. Oftentimes people associate laziness with somebody who totally does not want to train at all. All right. But for today's show, we don't necessarily look at laziness as a description of a person. All right. To me personally, I believe everybody has their own level of laziness in them. I don't necessarily think that people should be labeled as lazy, because I think that everyone is capable of being lazy to a point, which means to me as well that everyone is also capable of not being lazy and being really disciplined in what they want to do. All right. So that issue aside, all right, guys. So what is it, or what are some common things that we can really get to look into that will get us or provide us the opportunity to fight off that laziness in us? All right. And oftentimes, as I did get to mention, the issue of laziness is something that we kind of construe or that we make up in our mind. And when we've really decided that, it's not really a good day to train. Sometimes we stick to it from start to finish, and we just throw in the towel, and it's gonna be a day where we won't be able to train. All right. And that's not really a bad thing. All right. Because to me, sometimes also what we intend to do. So let's say you did want to push through with training, but unfortunately certain circumstances happen during your day, and it doesn't really or it won't be something that you are able to necessarily do as you had hoped. All right. So oftentimes you can look at the situation where it probably was something that was meant to have happened, especially if you are somebody who has a very, very tight schedule. Sometimes what happens is you can't normally have certain days where things happen as you meant it to be. All right. So oftentimes the way to fight the lazy is to really just consider what really is already there and just go with the flow. All right. So if when it comes to that situation where you cannot really be able to do the training that you had intended to do, and there isn't really anything you can adjust during that particular day, then the way to deal with the lazy is to reschedule what you had intended. All right. So option A is to just, let it be and not be able to train that day, or you have to reschedule that particular training that you had intended for that moment. All right. So that's one solution. Okay. Now I know that kind of looks very simple for people, but mind you, there are certain individuals, including myself, who, let's say, when they commit to something, they really want that instance to happen as they intended or as they scheduled. And they feel very, very guilty and very bad when they aren't able to push through. All right. So this is within that kind of mind frame. If you are that type of person, you have that type of personality where you want something to happen, and if it doesn't happen, you feel really, really bad or really, really guilty about it. Always think that there are other options that you can look into, and you don't have to feel that much guilt, especially if you can push through, but at a later date or at a different schedule that you had intended. All right. So that's one way to deal with it. Another way that is actually very simple is creating the opportunity for you not to get tied up in that situation. And an example of this is, I believe many people, if you look into or research it, sometimes a lot of trainers will suggest to you that, okay, if you're the type of person who you are probably and most likely will get a little bit lazy within your training routine for the week, maybe, or for the month, and so on. Most trainers will advise you to put all your gym equipment, or sorry, your gym bag, let's say. All right. So your clothes, maybe your earphones and all that good stuff. All right. Or your water bottle, everything pretty much that you use for training, you put it in a bag. And let's say you drive to a particular venue to train, have that ready with you always in your car or maybe in your backpack, things like that. So it's a very basic kind of tip and trick that you could use, but I tell you, and I kid you not, it is actually very effective. Why? Because it not only reminds you that you have to train for that day, it also kind of guilt trips you. I know it's a little bit it's a little bit of an issue for some people, but it does give you that extra push or gives you that extra reminder that you really do intend to train, and whatever happens, you gotta look at not wanting to stay within that mind frame of being lazy for that period in time. All right, because yeah, that's pretty much what we really want, when it comes to training. You really want to stay consistent, and if you are admittedly enough someone who gets into that type of thinking where don't really feel like it today, so let's not do it. All right, sometimes the best way you can deal with it is to really still push through even if you don't feel like it. And that's actually another good tip. All right, I know it's kind of sucky to do, but sometimes not every training session really is something that comes up where you are gonna be wanting to do it wholeheartedly. All right, so for the lack of term, yeah, sometimes you will have those days where you really are not essentially in the mood to do any of it, but because you know for a fact that it is good for your health and it will help your fitness level get better, you will do your best to really still push through even if you don't really feel like it. All right, and oftentimes people associate this with being disciplined enough to stay consistent and keep on doing your training sessions. All right, and yeah, unfortunately, or rather fortunately for many people, not everyone will be able to just suck it up pretty much, but it's something that you do get to develop through a longer period in time. And so yeah, it's something that you will need to learn and relearn several times. And so it is something that is possible for everyone to do, but it is something that you get to learn and relearn several times before you're able to really stick with it. And so yeah, it's basically knowing and realizing that you have many other different ways to deal with the fact that you won't be able to train accordingly to the schedules that you want. All right, and another point to consider when you do get into the issue or the mood of feeling lazy during training, it's important that
you really also look into how you actually feel. All right. And it's not just looking into it on a physical level. Maybe it's also something that is tied up with how exhausted you feel emotionally, maybe also um mindfully. All right. Sometimes when you have that urge or those moments where you feel like, oh, I just don't feel 100%, um and then you eventually tell yourself, yeah, it's generally the feeling of I'm pretty lazy lately. Sometimes it's actually a signal for you to take a step back and just let things be and just give yourself the break that you need. All right. Sometimes there are really those off days where you just really need to accept that you need to sit back, relax, and just let things be. All right. And like I did mention a while back, there's always a good um there's always a good thing to come out when you do option B, option C, and so on and so forth throughout the alphabet. All right. Um, Oftentimes it is better to really take a step back and just, be able to care for yourself. Maybe not through physical fitness, but through, just relaxing your mind and having time for yourself with maybe family and friends as well. All right. So I hope that today you were able to, kind of think about your own situation as well. If you are admittedly somebody who gets a little bit lazy in certain points in time throughout your training routines, throughout your fitness journey, I hope that you're able to look into your own situation and find out maybe what really is it that you could maybe adjust or look into in terms of options when it comes to training or maybe not training during this period in time. All right, guys. I know for a fact that term lazy is kind of like has such a negative connotation, but as I mentioned, all of us get to experience it. It's not just people who start off their fitness journey. Oftentimes, even some of the most, um, you know, well trained individuals will have those days where it really won't be something that is possible to happen. So, you know, you just gotta take a step back and just look at the bigger picture and see which scenario is gonna work better for you in the end. All right. So I hope that today's show was something very helpful for you guys. And yeah, so if you have been able to watch and listen to some of the previous shows already, thank you very much. And if you have not been able to subscribe to the channel yet, please do, because it really does help out the channel a lot. If you have any questions, comments, and concerns, please leave those below. You never know, I could answer some of the questions that you already have or that you get to leave there. And if you also feel that today's show was very helpful to you, please give it a like, even have the opportunity to share it with your friends, maybe your family and your loved ones as well. All right, guys. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. Coach RKaye here, reminding you always to never give up on your movement journey because it's never too late to move. Bye-bye.